Welcome everyone to our event tonight. This is our first virtual event of the year. We had a collaborative in-person event with two other Philadelphia groups in January, but this is our first official Philly Chi event, so thank you all for being here. And the event tonight is Land Your Next UX Role in 2023, and it's sponsored by the Judge Group. And a little bit about who we are. Philly Chi is an interdisciplinary group committed to advancing UX, also known as computer-human interaction, and which is why we're CHI, computer-human interaction, as a professional discipline, and to strengthening the Philadelphia UX community through regular educational programming and networking opportunities. We dedicate our work to a culture of knowledge sharing and community building. Philly Chi implicitly supports a safe and positive environment for professionals to gather, converse, and explore interests in user experience design. And this is where I would love to introduce all of us. So we are an almost entirely new board from last year. And I'm really excited about this group of board members. So I just wanted to give us all the chance to introduce ourselves. And we'll go in order that the pictures are in. So hi, I'm Kieran. I was the community coordinator with Philly Chi last year, and I'm proud to be the board chair this year. I very recently started working at Vanguard as a UX designer and very excited to be there. And I previously worked as a UX team of one on a gamification product. And I am a career switcher, so I started in visual art, and then I actually did a UX boot camp over the pandemic and found my passion in UX design. So I love about this board that we come from all different backgrounds, and so I will now pass it on to V.
Hi, everyone. I'm V Nguyen, and I am the vice chair of Philly Chi. I recently graduated from Drexel last year. I currently work as a user experience designer. I work for JP Morgan under their healthcare payments team. Their subsidiary called InstaMed, and I'm local in Philadelphia, and I'm really excited for this event and just want to thank all of the panelists in advance for their time. So I hope you guys enjoy. I will pass it to Epiphany.
Hi, everyone. I'm Epiphany Liu. I'm a UX researcher. I currently do contract projects at the moment. I have a background in architecture. That's what I got my degree in. So like the rest of the board, we all have a very diverse background in that sense. And I'm also super grateful for our panelists today and happy to see everybody here and how much excitement we have for the event. So I will pass it to Lara.
Hey everyone, I'm Laura Sinengill. I'm the treasurer. I'm a UX researcher and designer, and I most recently worked in consulting as a UX analyst in the hospitality, financial services, and healthcare industries. And before UX, I was a nonprofit fundraiser for 6 years, and I did a UX certificate program before and during the pandemic and was able to make the switch. And really excited to be here and to help give back to Philly Chi, and really appreciate the panelists for their time.
Hi.
Ellery.
Thanks, Laura. My name is Ellery Seither. I am the community coordinator. I live in West Philly. I'm a UX designer at a company called Cadmium, which makes event and online learning products, and I work in the continuing medical education space. And before this role, I worked in marketing operations, and I made a switch as well. And I found Philly Chi community really helpful and wonderful during that kind of beginning part of my UX time. So I'm really happy to be on the board, and I'm very excited for tonight. And I'll pass it to Casey.
Hey, Ellery, thank you. Totally agree on how Philly Chi helped my transition as well. So I am the social media coordinator for Philly Chi. I am also a UX researcher by day over at Chatham Financial, which is actually in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, but I'm here based in Philly. Before that, I was a master's student at Drexel studying good old UX and human computer interaction. And before that, I was a journalist. So yep, that's my story. Excited to see you all tonight. Thanks for coming. Karen,
Awesome.
back to you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I just wanted to thank all of our sponsors tonight. So first, I want to thank our annual sponsors. So Rosenfeld Media, O3 World, Citizens Bank, Think Company, and Vanguard. And I want to especially thank tonight's event sponsor, the Judge Group. And I want to invite Nancy Burr, who is the Vice President of Enterprise Accounts, to tell us a little bit more about the Judge Group and what they do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We're excited to be here. I have several on my team. I'm actually want to say hello to everybody, but I'm going to turn it over to Janet Harbour, who's been with Judge longer than I have since I'm newer to the company and can speak more about it. So Janet, do you want to take over?
Sure. Hi. Thank you, Nancy. My name is Janet Harbour, Senior Vice President of Client Strategy and Growth, and part of our leadership team since joining Judge 15 years ago. So let me start by saying that the Judge Group is not a group of judges. Rather, we are a global professional services firm that was founded by Marty Judge 53 years ago in 1970 and have grown to $800 million in annual revenue. We specialize in a suite of tactical and strategic capabilities that our clients can benefit from across talent solutions, learning and development, and consulting solutions. So from the foundation of talent solutions, or hiring, staffing, and hiring, we provide cross-functional resources in the creative digital marketing space, as well as other disciplines, to help companies scale and address capacity issues. Our training division focuses on learning and development, upskilling, reskilling, and talent enablement solutions for organizations. And our consulting division can elevate all the way up to full-blown outcomes-based managed services, as well as talent-based managed services with a team of skilled professionals bundled on a statement of work basis. We're headquartered in the Philadelphia area, and our global footprint consists of 32 offices across the United States, Canada, and India. And so just to introduce my colleagues here today, Nancy, who you've just met, she heads up our creative and digital marketing space. Brian Newell and Rob Zabrowski are part of Nancy's team, responsible for driving recruiting and client services activity. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I just have to say, I've been to Philly Chi events. We're just excited to be supporting the events, meeting everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces. I am local. We're right in the King of Prussia area. So if anyone is looking for work or needs a hire, definitely reach out to us. We'd be happy to help. In UX, I think we get more UX research, strategy, and design roles than any other position, and several of them are remote. So please feel free to reach out if we can help you in any way. Looking forward to tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy and Janet. We really appreciate it. And thank you again, Judge, for making this event possible tonight. So I'm going to pass it to Casey, who's going to kick off the panel.
Yep. Hey guys, thanks again for coming. Tonight we're thrilled to present this fantastic group of panelists. They have wonderful chemistry after meeting for just the first time, which is super impressive. So you're in for a treat. We have a Neha Agarwal, who's a design manager over at Think Company. And then we have Michael Delise, who is a vice president at Digitas Health in the user experience department, and Lauren Muldoon, who's a design manager of UX strategy, a manager of UX strategy at Vanguard. Basically, the idea for tonight is that we've come up with a list of some good questions, and I will be moderating tonight's panel, just facilitating some organic discussion between these three lovely individuals. But I encourage you all to drop any questions in the chat, and we will get to the ones that we can get to tonight. So totally appreciate that. Any questions before we begin? Nope. Great. All right. Just give us a couple seconds while we set up this virtual panel here and via Zoom.
Is it starting to pin or is it, okay. Are we seeing pinning?
I think we
I
have
see
two
my
of us.
video and I see Michael's.
Yeah.
Okay, I just need to add Neha.
Now I
Hold
see Neha.
on. Clicking through.
I think we're
Now I see Casey.
everyone there.
I'm just trying to find, hey Neha, can you maybe talk so that maybe you'll come to the top here? Oh, there you
Sure.
are. I see.
Yeah, hi.
Wait a minute.
I can see all four of us if that's helpful.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you so much. I guess for some reason I'm not seeing that, but yeah, you know, live and die by technology, as we all know. Let's start it off with resumes. So Neha, Michael, Lauren, give us some like general rules of thumb to follow for UX specific resumes.
Are you thinking specifically more design or research or strategy, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. It'd be great if you could hit on like all three or however you feel the most confident with your given experience.
Great. I can kick us off with just an initial answer, but I'll speak more heavily around the UX strategy and design. I can speak lightly to the research side of it, but you know, I think I might leave that to some of the more experts who maybe have a little bit more experience on the research side. But from a UX strategy perspective, I would say that one of the biggest things that I know I'm looking for is understanding the individual's process. So I'm really looking for the human-centered design process to understand not only how they're solving the problems, but really how they're getting there. So what does their discovery phase look like? What about how are they partnering with researchers to define user insights, and how are they building some of those guiding principles that are really going to be the foundation of the experience that they're building? I'm also looking for just the depth of knowledge and experience that they've had over the years. So I really want to understand on their resume, not only the things that they've done, but what are the outcomes that came from those accomplishments. So whether that be it aligning back to the business, whether it be some kind of improvement for a product, whatever it might be, I really want to understand, why is it valuable that you're telling me this? From a UX design perspective, I would say that really what I'm looking for is to see a little bit more of the solution, the beauty and the design of something, but I'm also looking on a resume to understand what is the design strategy itself too. So what are you using? Do you have experience with design systems? Do you understand UI? Do you understand dev? And how you're partnering with them in order to build whatever it is, that you're maybe talking about within your resume, but looking to understand those skill sets. What are the programs that you use? All of those good things. I'll pass it on.
I can chime in. I think, Casey, was your question more about the resume, like reviewing phase, or the resume itself?
Like when you have the resume in front of you, or if you're giving advice to your colleagues that are applying for some roles in the UX areas, what are things that you're like, you need to have that and you should
Sure.
touch on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some basic things that I scan when I scan a resume, and I'll fully admit that what I'm doing is scanning. I'm not reading a resume word for word. I'll also say that it's better when the design and the formatting is legible and there's clear hierarchy. And I say this as also as a graphic designer, where we're at now is you might be submitting your resume and it might be going through another platform that reads the resume, and your design of your resume might not be what I see in the platform. So keeping it as simple as possible in terms of the formatting is really important. And then things I'm scanning for would be, certainly, can I link quickly out to your LinkedIn? Can I link quickly to your portfolio? I look for many of the same things that Lauren, you were just saying, but I thought I'd approach this question from the angle of like, how am I actually using a resume? And then I'm doing this quick scan of what positions you've had in the future, how long you've been there. And that I kind of, map to, if it's a mid-level role, then, I'm not looking for 10 years of experience. And maybe they're a career shifter, which we're open to that as well. So then I'm looking to see like, okay, maybe they haven't been in, UX for too long, but what were their experiences before that? I will also admit things that I hope not to find in a resume, in case that's helpful to you all. I don't think any of you all are probably doing this, but in case you are, I'll throw it out there. Things that mean I'm gonna like just move on to the next one would be things like, and it does happen from time to time, things that where the cover letter gets my name wrong or the company name wrong. Those are easy things, but also when you have, a bunch of them to look through, it's a little bit of like, okay, I don't know, I'm gonna move on from this one because the attention to detail is not the only thing that it's important, but those are quick wins, I think, for people. And then it's totally okay if other people disagree with this. So I know this is, people have differing opinions on this. Me personally, I do like to see what tools that you use, but I don't put a ton of weight in those because I'm looking more towards like how you think. And I will admit a pet peeve of mine is when people, and I still think you're a smart, wonderful person if you have this on your resume right now. So I realize what I'm saying is just very personal to me. I don't find a lot of value in the like, when people put the information graphic of like, I do 25% Figma and 30% this, and because I just like, then my UX research brain turns on and I'm like, where did that data come from? I think there's other ways to tell me that same story. I think it's an important story. I just don't think it tells me much to see it in that infographic. And I apologize if all of you are like, oh shoot, I have that on my infographic. I'm not the end all be all of hiring managers by any means. So.
I'm guilty of it. I totally had it on my resume. So,
okay.
And it's an interesting perspective now that you're giving me. Oh, okay. Yeah. Good to know.
So I don't actually care what programs you know, because I figure you're going to learn them and you can pick them up very quickly, right? Right now we're looking at mostly Sketch and Figma. And in the future, I expect Figma to be the thing. But when I look at a resume, I'm looking for accessibility experience, 100%. I need it. I can't, like, some experience, doesn't have to be a lot, but some understanding of that. I'm looking for design system work because everything is a design system now, right? And it's a way different way of thinking. So I'm looking for that. What else am I looking for? From a design standpoint, I want the resume. I do see the design of the resume, so it doesn't actually go through a system. So I get that. And I want to see the format of it. I want you to UX your resume, right? I don't have a lot of time. I guarantee you, you're getting about 2 to 3 minutes of my time. So UX your resume. I don't need 15 bullet points for every job that you ever had, right? Give me like a short 2-sentence on each job. And then your most recent job, that's what I'm most interested in, right? What are you doing right now? It's probably the job where you have, where you're the most senior, right? So what are you doing now? If you want to write a lot of bullets, I want to see a lot of bullets there. Or even something like a summary of all of your experience. I'm also I don't care what companies you've worked for. I'm more concerned with what your roles were. I'm not super concerned about how long you've been doing UX, or if you came from another industry. I expect you probably to come from another industry, most likely design. So I am looking for something on your resume that doesn't necessarily, and this is maybe specific to Digitas Health, which is where I work. I'm really looking for a role that is just UX, not all of your roles being UX UI. Love UX UI, right? Understanding all of that is extremely important, but my team is all UX. We're pure UX. So I really need to see a job, even if it's just a year, where you are just a UX person focused on UX. And that also is going to inform me that there's a possibility that you're going to have wireframes in your portfolio. And I know that we'll talk about that later, but I have some thoughts on that too. But yeah, so UX it and know your audience. We are busy, right? It's not that we don't care, but we're looking at a lot of resumes. So think about us and how you can get your message across to us as fast as possible.
Yeah, and I think you guys had a lot of really good points that, really highlighting like the look and feel of the resume, tailoring it to the company that you're applying for, yes or no. But one thing that is on a lot of, applicants' mind is how to handle those ATS robots. What are your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can get your hands on it, I would do the research and start even just like going to Google Images and seeing like what do you see on the other end, right? And then that's why I've realized it's really important to keep the formatting of your resume simple, because I've done a little bit of side-by-side comparison where I could go to the person's website and get the PDF of their resume and be like, oh, I can see why this translated well. By the way, none of that is what I'm judging you on. This is just out of my curiosity to see like, what is our platform doing? And the resumes that have, more complexity in terms of their design and the formatting, they don't seem to translate as well, at least with the platform we use, but I don't have exposure to a bunch of platforms, so I can't speak to that. I think the key is though, just making sure it's not overly complex so that platform doesn't end up misrepresenting your resume in some way. But I'm not, sometimes when I get a resume that it didn't translate very well, I'm not using it. Then I'm going to your LinkedIn or your website and trying to learn more that way. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Michael.
So I was actually just going to play off a little bit of that. So I know that previously I said I do want to see a designed resume, right? That maybe is formatted a little bit differently, but also have a non-designed resume. And don't ever upload your resume and let it autofill those fields, right? Like put the content in there yourself. I know it takes more time, but put the content in there yourself. Don't trust that this machine is going to parse your PDF the way that you expect them to. And that also just makes it easier. Not in this particular job, we don't have that system, but in other jobs, it makes it easier for us to understand the content of your resume, because you have the opportunity to remove weird formatting and things like that.
Michael took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say have to, in a good way. Like, it's exactly what I did when I applied to Vanguard. I had 2 resumes in my back pocket when I was going through and looking for new opportunities. And I will say the one that was more thoroughly designed with my infographic, I have to admit that was there. I left that off of the other one. The other resume that I uploaded into the system, yes, to Michael's point of don't let it autofill. It just never is going to do it right, and it's just going to make it a mess for you. I know on the Vanguard system, it got really muddy for me. But I will say that the second resume that I did have though for that automated system was shorter. I was much more pointed in what it was that I put in there, because even on my side, I can say when I get a resume that comes through to me, sometimes it's just like this one narrow spot and it makes it really long. So when I scroll through this, I'm like, oh man, and it made me glad of like, okay, that one needs to be shorter, because maybe 2, maybe 3 bullet points for, say, if you have 3 jobs, or even if it's just 1, sure, you can put a little bit more there, but the shorter that is, the quicker you're going to get my attention, and I'm going to read it. And then I'm most likely going to click on your portfolio to get that beautifully designed resume with more context and information on it.
Lauren, so glad you said the word portfolio, because that's what we're talking about right now. So as you know, you get to that portfolio, like, what's like the number one, like, wow, this is awesome, I'm so happy this is on this portfolio?
I mean, I can take it first. So the portfolios that get my attention the most are the ones that I would describe as just bold and loud and in my face. I love to see color. It's a lot of the portfolios for me, it's the aesthetic of it. It's a personal choice. I like those. Those grab my attention. I get it. And I'm like, ooh, okay, I want to dig in more. If I see, beautiful typography, whatever, but that just brings me in. Then what I'm really looking for in those portfolios are, I want to see case studies. I want to be able to go through this portfolio without your voiceover to understand, okay, what was the problem you were trying to solve? What was the primary objective? Who are your users? What are their needs? Why did you solve these things? How did you solve it? How did you get to that final solution? I want to see your process. So for me, I could have a portfolio that has one outstanding case study that tells me all the steps. That's good enough for me. As opposed to a portfolio that maybe has 30 projects on that are just images with a title and a brief little description on each of them. I will speak solely from a UX strategy perspective. I'm really interested in how you came up with the solution, who you partnered with, what your role was on it. That's huge. I really want to understand that. And we can get into kind of when we go through the interview and some do's and don'ts, or, things that I've gotten feedback on and what I give feedback to others. But from a strategy perspective, I really want to understand just how this sauce was made, or whatever the secret sauce is. I want to understand all the ingredients that went into it.
So it's funny, Lauren, because I'm almost exactly the opposite. I don't want paragraphs. Everybody has pictures of sticky notes on walls, right? Like that's like table stakes to me, right? Like the way that you're thinking, right? I'm looking for wireframes. So I'm looking for black and white.
The process, right?
Right. So I'm looking for wireframes, and I'm also looking very critically at those wireframes. Like, your mobile, right? Does the hamburger button say menu underneath it, right? Your labels, do they have context, or do they say learn more? If you have learn more on a button, don't put it in your portfolio. You're just not going to get the interview, or like read more or click here or anything like that. So I'm like really focused on the interface work. If you're a designer, right? If you're a UX UIer, right? A hybrid, I want to see the wireframes too. And I want to see them. I want to see that you put just as much time into that as you put into the visual design. So I want you to take me through your process in the interview. And that's like how I make my decision. You get your foot in the door with me by having interface work that looks like you understand UX best practices and common patterns and laws of UX.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can chime in to kind of literally be the middler here, I guess. So I think, Lauren, you bring up an interesting point about bold design bringing you into the portfolio. I can totally relate to that, although for me, it's very dependent on, I appreciate bold designs of portfolios, but if they start to overpower the work that the portfolio is showcasing, that doesn't always resonate with me because to me, that's the number one thing I'm looking for in a designer is just like, can you understand the context in which your design is going to operate? So to me, if the boldness of the design of the portfolio itself is overshadowing the work, then to me, there's a bit of a disconnect between what is the job of this portfolio site. But if you can show your personality and your design chops through the design of your portfolio without overshadowing the work, then I'm all for that. I concur with process and case studies. I'm okay with a lot of text, but I'm also not okay with minimal text. For me, the importance is in terms of the images and the text on your website, regardless of how much or little they are, is it all very purposeful? Do your case studies have a good storytelling arc to them? And then I'll add one thing that I've noticed kind of recently is I am very grateful to UX boot camps and different education programs that exist now that didn't exist before. I think they're great. One like challenge we have though is when a case study is always presented with the like sort of steps that we all know we should go through, but doesn't also go deeper in those steps. It's a little hard for me then to gauge kind of like, how does this person really think versus that's showing me how well are they executing kind of the steps in the ideal path forward. And the reason why that's important is for two reasons. One, I'm looking for some evidence of just being a critical thinker, right? And so if you're going deeper in certain areas that maybe aren't so prescribed in the steps that we all know and love, that really gives me insight into how you're thinking about problems. But then the other reason would also be because as consultants who don't specialize in any industry, who also don't specialize in, we have clients all across the maturity spectrum when it comes to digital product and service design. And so we don't always get to go through all of those ideal steps with every single client. So, the business constraints, the constraints of that particular project, the team makeup of the clients, our team makeup, all of those things affect kind of like how each project unfolds. And so you're never going to get a project where you get to go through all the perfect ideal steps of something, because that's just not how reality works. So those are the things I would add in terms of portfolios.
Yeah, so just a quick thing, you all highlighted it a lot on UX design specific portfolios, but what about for researchers? Similar rules apply?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing. So I'm reviewing mostly UX UI portfolios and also some research and some content strategy when I'm kind of like helping my colleagues that are hiring managers for those things. But I would say the same things apply, but again, that storytelling aspect is really, really important, right? Can you craft a narrative that showcases how you tackled that particular challenge, what your constraints were, how did you use those constraints to be creative and try to innovate in whatever scope you had for that project? Same thing with the images and text. It's really about how purposeful are those pieces of content. And I'm not as like, oh, this is too much text or this is too little text. Because there have been examples when there's very little text, but for whatever reason, the purpose was very clear and the story came across. And so that's okay too.
And when telling these stories, how do you showcase some of these when they're purely academic or boot camp studies? What are your thoughts on making that kind of experience more formal if the candidate doesn't have any formal work or intern experience?
Mm-hmm. I answered the last one, so I don't want to chime in.
I want to
answer.
Dig into that a bit. Are you talking about someone who doesn't have a or like is new to the job market, doesn't have a lot of work to show? Is that what you're referencing?
Right. Yeah. So they haven't had a prior role in the industry, but they've completed a boot camp or they have completed a degree, academic degree of some sort, and they have schoolwork or the boot camp work. Is that kosher to you guys?
It sure is.
Yeah.
There's definitely, for me in particular, I still go back to the case study aspect. And one clarity that I just wanted to provide between Michael and I. So when I say case study, I'm looking more at the strategy aspect of it. So yes, I care about the wireframes and the UX experience itself, like take me through that. But for me in particular, in a strategy perspective, I care less about the UI and the look and feel of something. But if I'm looking for one of my colleagues for a UX designer, then, focusing more on the UI, then yes, I'm kind of skipping through some of this stuff, but I like seeing the case studies because at least I see it's still there. The same applies for somebody who's coming out of school. So whether they're taking a boot camp or, like I said, coming out of school, I go back to kind of what you were saying, Neha, as far as the storytelling aspect of it. That's huge. How can you tell your story in its simplest form, but clearest form? That it's not going to take me 30 minutes to go through this thing. I can get through it and say, do your elevator pitch, like under 3 minutes. How can you take me through this case study? And I'm exaggerating a little bit, push it to 5, but like get me through it really quickly. And so when I scroll through or swipe through the whole thing, I feel like, wow, okay, they get it. They get it. I want to talk to them more.
And, I know you guys really were honing in on that, like tell the story aspect. So for, portfolio site or slide deck,
I've done both.
Yeah, I'm okay with both.
Yeah.
It really comes down to the storytelling, and I would add, I concur with Lauren on, to me, if the role we have open can accommodate somebody who's more junior, that's fine, and I'm great with showing academic work. Again, it comes down to the storytelling, and in particular, even when you're doing academic work or boot camp work, you have constraints, right? So to me, constraints are the things that unlock creativity and innovation. And so are you aware of those constraints? Can you talk about them in a concise way that then contextualizes why you approach that problem the way that you approached it? All of those things still apply, whether it's hypothetical work or actual work in the real world. Those things are common to me.
So I would say that if you don't have a lot of real world experience and I have a junior level position, I want to just see effort. I want to see that you're excited about UX. And if you have work to share, great, right? We hired somebody who came out of school with some graphic design background, but it felt very much like product design work, right? Which was different than the work that normally comes out of like a school like Temple. So we hired immediately. So if I can see like some effort, it doesn't all have to be right. I don't expect it to be right? So this is totally different, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's hard to fill junior positions.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard. I don't think there's a lot of junior people that are in our industry. I think it's a lot of switchers, right? So if you come from a design background and you were senior level as a designer, you probably got a senior level position as a UXer, not an entry level, right? So that also like sort of muddies the waters sometimes because you may have switched, but you kept that senior title. If you're junior and you don't have the real world work, we will teach you. We would love to teach you. We want more junior people, as many as we can get.
I will second that. The people that come in that are so thirsty and enthusiastic, it's easy to tell. Like it automatically shines through within those portfolios. It'll shine through just with how you're writing your resume. But it is so welcomed. The ones that are the most thirsty it's inspiring. It's exciting because we've sat here and we've done it forever. And like, new people coming in, and whether they're switchers or juniors or just out of college, whatever, it's exciting. It's fun. We want to talk to you and see what your ideas are. Definitely second everything Michael was saying.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a really important thing for someone newer to the industry is not being afraid of ambiguity, because that is the job, whether you're a really seasoned UXer or a newer UXer. To me, when we have junior positions open, that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. Is you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have a perfect portfolio, but are you a critical thinker? And when you're faced with lots of open-ended challenges, can you roll up your sleeves and kind of dig in? That's what's important in a junior role, I think.
I love that. I would even second it's important in a senior role too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you should always be good with
You
ambiguity.
nailed it with that word. I feel like that's been a topic of conversation lately for us. So like you nailed it.
Talking about critical thinking, displaying that and seeing that sparkle in someone's eye. We talked about that with the portfolio viewing and the resume viewing, but now the applicant, this is junior or entry level or mid-level, has entered the interview stage. What are some questions that the interviewees should be prepared to answer specifically pertaining to UX? Like UX specific questions. And this does mean like design, strategy, UI, and research all rolled into one. I know it's a caveat, so bear with me, guys.
So I'm always looking for somebody to explain to me what the problem was, how they solved it, and what the outcome was, and how they made something better for the user, right? So that story really is what I'm looking for. So I have my number one go-to question is always, tell me one thing about one of your projects that where you had a major impact on the usability of the product and therefore the experience of the user. And I know we've talked a lot about like storytelling and things like that, right? I do tend to listen more when when I have an interviewee in front of me. That's where I want a PowerPoint. Like I want you to take me through a story the way you would explain all of your thinking to a client, right? It almost could be a client presentation, right? If you can convince the client that all of your decisions were sound and that that's the direction to go, you can probably convince me. So I have less questions and more of I want to sit back and this is where I want to know your process. This is where I want to know your strategic thinking. This is where, did you set the vision for the product, right? Did you have to pivot? Why did you have to pivot? How did you pivot, right? I mean, we're always pivoting. Your process, there's always the ideal, right? We spoke about it before, but there is not a world that exists where you're ever going to do the ideal, at least not that I've seen. And it's been, 21, 22 years. So if anybody has actually gotten the opportunity to do every single step of the process multiple times for multiple clients, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I think that a lot of what we do, like we talked about ambiguity, right? Creating clarity from ambiguity. How do you do that? What is your story? Tell me about your process. That's how you get the job for me, right? The resume gets me to look at your portfolio. The portfolio that gets me to invite you to the interview. And the interview, if you present something that is not just pulling up your portfolio online, and you tell me that story and you can convince me, then you're hired.
Some things that I would add to it, I agree with everything that you're saying, especially like I would say some advice that I even have for or things that I look for. We just recently are going through a ton of hiring. So I'm on interview calls, whether it's research, design, strategy, et cetera. And I think one of the biggest things that we're really looking for, especially myself, is to understand what your individual role was, which can be a really hard question. Doesn't sound like it, but I've definitely found myself in my own instance where I remember applying for a job and I used the word we constantly, to the point that the person who was interviewing me kept saying, well, what did you do? And I remember feeling like, I just told you what I did, not realizing that I kept using the word we. So I didn't end up getting that job. And the feedback that I got was basically, they didn't know what my role was. They didn't understand what it was that I actually brought to the table. And I think that's a common problem for folks, because we're working in these, whether it's, more agile processes, we're working in pod teams, we're partnering so closely between strategy, design, research. It's so easy to just fall into that. Hey, we did this whole project. So I would definitely say, as you're going through it, as odd as it might seem, use the word I a little bit more. Talk about the fact that you were on a team, but then say, hey, we did this together, but these were my individual contributions. This is what I owned. And then this is what I contributed to. So I would say that would be one of the biggest pieces of advice I can get, just based on my own personal experience interviewing and not getting a job because of that. And also just having, folks come in and really trying to dig in a little bit to understand what it is that was their personal contribution to whatever it is that they're showing us. The other thing I would say to everyone is just advice that I would give, or I'm looking for a conversation with someone. I want to feel like I'm just having a cup of coffee with somebody. I know that sounds silly, but I really want to alleviate the pressure for folks. Like, we try to keep it really casual when we're doing interviews. We try to make sure that we're setting up the stage of, hey, we're going to have 5 minutes for, intros in the beginning. Then the floor is yours. Walk us through what's going on, and then we'll leave some Q&A. So kind of setting things up for them. But I'd say the most successful interviewees that I've had are the ones that just they don't talk at me, they talk to me. They allow me to ask questions as we're going through it. It's and it's tough. That's not something everybody can do. It's not going to say you're going to get the job versus not getting the job. Definitely lean on your portfolio itself, but just take a deep breath, and we're all human, right? Like, we all had to go through this process. So but yeah, I'm looking for folks that are just want to, chill, relax, have a conversation with me. It's not scary.
Yeah. And before you jump in, Neha, and this might be a lot of pressure, but we're almost at time here for this panel session that was really awesome and robust. But I want to ask one last question for you guys, but how to prep for that design challenge. And Neha, yes, I'm speaking to you, I guess, but it's open to everyone, just because I know Think Company has a really awesome design challenge situation. Haven't experienced it for Vanguard or Digitas Health myself, but yeah, how to prep for that. Go, last hurrah right before the Q&A.
Sure. So I'll try to make it quick, but our hiring process, and you can go to our website, it's all outlined there, so you know what to expect if you apply. So there is a quick kind of phone call with our recruiters who go through some table stakes of does your financial expectation meet what we can meet, things like that, right? And if they get through these certain checkpoints, then we go to a hiring manager call. And that is more conversational. Totally agree, Lauren, and all of these touch points. I just want to have a casual conversation with someone. I want to leave lots of time for them to ask questions of me. In that hiring manager call, our questions fall into 3 categories. It's questions are about consulting, questions about the practice itself. And then one thing I want to call out is we don't always get to all of these questions, but I make sure I ask at least one, what I would call a cultural expectation question. So I always ask, what does, for example, what does a truly supportive employer look like to you? Because we want to make sure that that person has a chance to tell us what they're looking for in an employer, because everybody deserves to work at a place that they feel like they can help build the culture in, right? So culture fit is not something we're looking for. We're looking for cultural adds, and those types of questions help us suss those things out. And then to your question, Casey, the last step then is what we call a think session. And you have your choice. You can either present a case study around a fictitious design challenge that we have written up, and we have different ones for different practices and different levels. Totally fictitious. We don't do anything with those. We're not making any money off of them or sharing them or any of that. But you can also opt, if you have past case studies, more senior people tend to do this, to present a case study of past work that you've done. But it really doesn't matter whether you do the design challenge or opt to present a past project. We're looking for the same things that we've already talked about, is how do you talk about your work? How do you frame the problem for us? How do you articulate what you did? Why did you do it that way and not that way, right? And I love when people talk about, well, now that I've had some hindsight, here's what I would have done differently. Because, I mean, you're always going to learn from even the best project in the world, right? Like the most successful, you're still going to go back and been like, oh, I could have done that better. Or even like, what were some of the missed opportunities that you couldn't get to? Because I understand there are constraints and scope that you can't control. But if you could control some of those things, what would you do? Those are the kind of like nuances that we're really interested in when it comes to that think session. Is really just like 90 minutes of, you're not presenting for 90 minutes, it's usually around 30-ish minutes or so, but it's a total 90-minute deeper discussion about your thought process and why you tackled the challenge the way that you tackled it. I don't know if that helps answer the question, Casey.
That was perfect. You guys all did a wonderful job, and literally thank you so much. I learned a lot here today too. I hope everyone else did. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over. We're wrapping up the panelist session, but don't worry, we're going to be doing the Q&A. So Kieran, take it away, back to you.
Yes, thank you to the panelists. This has been amazing. And I feel like you could all talk for 3 more hours and have amazing things to say. So I'm sorry if we had to cut you off at any point, but really great discussions. And I am now going to spotlight V, and I'm going to let V, our vice chair. She has been diligently combing through all of your questions in the chat, and so she's going to ask some now to the panelists. So I will pass it on to V.
Sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, that was amazing. I just wanted to start off the Q&A by thanking all of our wonderful panelists for just taking the time to speak at our events. You had such an insightful and thoughtful presentation to all. I have questions myself, but I know everyone else has questions, so I'm going to get to it. Thank you, everyone, for also sending in those questions. They were very thought out and super in-depth, and I was very surprised and whatnot. There are a lot of submissions. I've compiled them, so we're gonna kind of just walk one by one. So how this will work is I'll introduce the question, and then whoever would like to take lead on the question, just like you've done during the panel, take over. So for the first part, I kind of separate all the questions into categories and groupings, so it'd be a little bit easier to shift through. I know we had a ton of questions regarding boot camps and UX certificates and career changes too. So one of the first questions we actually got was, is there a particular certification that you suggest for UX research, or are there boot camps and online certification red flags when you're looking through resumes? Because there's a lot of criticism regarding the program and certificates. So what are your thoughts, kind of the pros and cons to boot camps and UX certificates overall?
I can start unless either of you are.
No, you can take this one.
Okay. Honestly, and I say this having been in the education world for a long time prior to coming to Think Company, I'm not looking for any particular educational path. Like, I'm not like, oh, they took this boot camp or that certification, and I don't think that's a good one, because I really just don't know that I can be a judge of that, to be fair. Like I don't know those boot camps or whatever program you studied in intimately enough to be able to use that as like a deciding factor. For me, it's still about just seeing that, like, okay, whether they're a career shifter or they're just getting started in their career, is that like, okay, so they've tried to go learn about this industry in some way, like, and then it's really after that is just like, I'm going to learn what you've learned through the hiring process. So I'm not overly concerned with kind of whether you studied it at all. But for us, like, exposure to it somehow is good. No exposure obviously won't work for us, but it might for other places.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. And I go back to what Michael had said before of when, as far as programs go, and who cares what kind of programs, we're going to teach you. A lot of the programs that exist right now are just the ways of working and the process. I will speak for the team at Vanguard. I mean, everyone is so helpful. They want to dive in. Everyone's eager. It's, let me help you. No, wait, let me help you do this. I mean, it's just something everyone wants to learn and grow that way. So I agree. I mean, there's the usual suspects. I mean, Nielsen Norman, like, I'll look maybe sometimes if I see something like that, it catches my idea, some of those, but I applaud it when you go and I see that extra effort there, but it's not something that I sit here and say, oh, because they got their MBA in design, or because they took this certificate or achieved the certificate, that's the only reason I'm going to look at them. I'm actually more interested in your experience and say your portfolio case study. That's what's going to get you in the door for me.
So I've seen people who have masters in human computer interaction and they weren't impressive in an interview. So I would say, great, you got a certificate or you went to a boot camp, right? Like, again, you're excited about it. That's what that tells me, right? It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't really matter to me which one it is or, what you learn there. It's showing me that you have the initiative to learn. And I mean, the majority of what I do at this point is teach people, right? And like, that's what I want to do. So here's my advice. My advice is be hungry, go do a boot camp or get a certificate, but find a place that you will not be the only UX person, right? Find a place that has a full team. Like, I would say look for at least 10 people, right, on the team. You will learn, because everybody's different. Like, you could see it in this panel. We're all very different, even in what we're looking for when we're interviewing. And there's no wrong when it comes to that. And if you can get a job at a place that has a large UX team, you will have multiple managers who do things differently. And you will learn a lot of different things and you will end up being very well-rounded. So like at DH, Digitas Health, we have people that are, my mentor actually works there with me now, who taught me everything I know about moderating usability testing, right? So she's an expert in that. I am the interface person. I am all about the interfaces. So also in that interview process, you might actually run into all three of us, right? Not actually us, but people that are looking for different things. Because again, very interface, very strategy focused, right? So be picky with where you apply to and know what the UX team is like there and how big it is. It's really important.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and kind of pivoting off of what Lauren said earlier about experiences and how, with boot camps and certificates, one of the questions we received was, what advice can you give to to someone who's transitioning into the UX world from a different career. In addition, like to someone who is like switching from a different field to UX and they have no experience, you know, how can they stick out in the competition nowadays with, you know, how the market is when most employers are looking for someone with 5+ years of experience or 10+ years, you know, so where can they start with that? And this is a good segue from, you know, UX certificates and boot camps as well.
It's interesting. I got that question just recently. Of I don't have a whole lot of experience. I don't have 5 to 10 years. I have 2, but I have 10 years in this other discipline. So I'll be honest, when I go through resumes, I don't even look. I don't look at how many years experience you have. I still care more, even more so than, like, I guess, about the actual work and what it is that you can show me. Someone actually called it out in the chat here, and I can't figure out for the life of me how to like it, but I would say mentors. Find a mentor. Go to ADP list. Call out to Sean, who's my boss, who was on this call. She's an amazing mentor. But definitely, I have my own set of mentors too. I go to certain people that I've worked with in the past, and I will call them and just say, hey, I have to run something by you. Even when I came to apply back to Vanguard, I ran my portfolio and my presentation for that interview past my mentor to say, like, let me do a mock interview with you. Let me just walk through it with you. I will say too, when I am not fully a UX strategist, I started out working in print at Condé Nast for Vogue in New York City. Like, I had no idea what UX was. We were all like paper, print, everything. And then I moved over to advertising, and then I moved into just, and that was still print. And then I moved into UI design. And then from there, I met a friend at my job that was doing UX, and I was struggling with, I can't understand how to convince people that my design works. And I want to show them that this is the best solution. And this individual, she taught me how to do that. And she was UX strategy. And that's where I learned all of this stuff. And when I went to apply for a UX strategic role, what I ended up doing was taking a lot of my designs and then just kind of layering over the why. But I had research to back it up, whether that was data and analytics, like whatever it was that I could pull from to show an outcome. So yes, this was the design, which was fine. But since I was going more for strategy, I needed to show how I got there, why it was important, the problem, all this buzzwords that we've already said throughout this entire panel. But I definitely say, if you're switching, I would find a mentor, like really show stuff to people to see if it resonates with them.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Oh, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, you go.
The only thing I would add to that is, I guess what I would call like translation. And I switched from graphic design to UX. And we have people at Think Company that come from nursing, come from criminal justice, like all, many non-design fields. And I would say those folks that are at Think, they're there because they were able to make the translation between what they used to do and what we do, if that makes sense. We don't expect you to know everything we do before you work here, of course, but like, can you connect those dots for me, right? And so, when I interview someone who's coming from a nursing background, for example, like some of them do a really, really good job translating, hey, so when I work with my patients, I approach it this way. And so here's my takeaways on how I would apply working with the clients, for example, that you all have, or here's how I worked with my supervisor. So this is maybe how I would work with a design lead, for example. Like that translation to me is very important because it means, first of all, they've thought about this for a while, right? And to Michael's point of UXing your application and your interview process, it shows that they were trying to do their best to understand as much as they can with the information available to them about Think Company, and they've tried to connect those dots. So I think that translation piece is really important. I didn't realize I did that when I interviewed with Think Company. I guess I realized that after the fact, where I was like, I've never really done UX. I've taught some of it in the graphic design program I taught in, but what I realized after the fact is I made that translation between, hey, I was doing user experience as it applied to designing learning experiences as a professor. And I guess I made the translation of, here's what I do and how I approach that. And so here's how I would, if given the chance, apply that to the UX space.
So I think that this is difficult, right? Because I think that this is a problem in general with multiple different types of jobs, right? How do you get experience when you don't have experience, and you need experience for every open position, right? So everybody's story is unique, right? My story, like in summary, is somebody who I interviewed with said, "Oh wow, your system thinking is way stronger than I expected based on your experience." And he became at that point, my like career mentor, right? Somebody who I actually never worked for him because I don't know. It was like the plan was to work for him. The plan was to go and get all the experience that he told me to go and get, and for him to guide me to. I always would ask him, should I interview at this, or should I apply to this job? Should I apply to that job? What do you think of this company? Vanguard actually came up a couple times because he knew that you guys had a strong team over there. But and this was actually a really long time ago as well, right? Like 12, 15 years ago. So I was lucky I had somebody to sort of guide me. And then it also came down to not being concerned about salary and being more concerned about experience. And, I took jobs that were 100% about the experience and not about the money. And of course, I made enough money to live, but, salary was unimportant. And there was probably about 5 years where my salary didn't move at all. And that's because I was in jobs and I was moving from job to job to get specific experience based on what this person who was sort of guiding me was recommending for me. So I would say networking is really important, and finding somebody who is willing to carve out even just a little bit of their time to help guide you over years, right? And then you create that relationship with that person, and who knows, maybe someday you might end up working for them. Maybe you won't, because you find a home someplace else, right? But it is difficult. How do you get a job that you need experience for? Everybody is asking for experience and you don't have it. It's difficult, and sometimes people get lucky, but I think that if you're networking, coming to events like this, go to LinkedIn, link in with people and reach out to them and ask them questions. And not everybody's going to respond, but somebody will.
Yeah, I very much like those answers. Yeah, thank you for that. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit more on like the portfolio end, because we got a lot of questions about that. This one I don't really hear often. I thought was very unique. Can anyone from the panel kind of touch upon a portfolio for UX researchers? Because I feel like that's not really commonly talked upon. What does the case studies look like, the resumes and whatnot too? So, you could share.
I mean, so I have one of my peers at Vanguard is hiring for research, and what I found, I will say the difference between the UX strategy and the UX research portfolios, we've come into situations where they're almost used interchangeably, where it's kind of a running joke at this point, because I'll be passing resumes her way and she'll be passing resumes my way to be like, oh, I think this person's actually a UX strategist. I'm like, oh, I think they're actually a UX researcher. So it's kind of tough, but to really distinguish between the two of them, my coworker and I have really kind of gone back to the human-centered design process. So when I'm looking at a researcher portfolio, I'm looking really heavily on the discovery phase of what are your research methods? What is it that you're looking, what's the problem you're looking to solve? Talk to me about the users, talk to me about why, the questions that you're asking them, what's your research guide? All of that. Why are you doing other research over, why are you doing primary over secondary research, whatever it is. But I also am looking for, okay, you have those research findings. What are the insights from them? And I think that's one thing that in particular that sometimes when I'm looking through UX research portfolios, I'm missing. It goes right from research findings right to either solutions, or it goes right to say, oh, okay, from these findings, we created these guiding principles, and then we're just going to run with it. I'm really looking for the insights. And then I would say more the strategy side, we go more to that defined stuff. That's where some of those, like really show me those wireframes and like why you're doing certain things. But the research is all about that initial discovery. So, and then additionally, besides that, it's also once you build something, like show me user testing. What kind of user testing are you doing? How are you, like, what are the key results that you're looking for? So how are you measuring success? All of those things. So it still goes back to the case study in particular and showing that human-centered design process, but it's focusing in on certain aspects of it. So for me, for research, it's focusing more heavily on the discovery. And then once you get into I would say the delivery of that and testing it. So testing the success and defining those metrics up front so you know what it is that you're looking for.
So we have companies that do most of our research, but so the way that I think about it is we are still guiding that research. So there is not a discussion guide that has ever come through our department from an external source that hasn't been rewritten by one of us. So also in a lot of instances at very research focused, like only research folk, they end up being more marketing research. So not so much usability research. So I find that there's a lot of handholding when it comes to getting them to really ask the questions the way I need them to be asked so that I know that the answers aren't led. So me personally, when I got the job at DH, I brought in, now again, we sort of want everybody to sort of know a little bit about everything. So we don't, again, have a research department. So it's always nice just to see a little bit of a PowerPoint of the results of some usability testing. It's always nice to see, functional documentation, right? Don't forget about that, by the way. That's off topic, but still don't forget about that. Like I like to see your scripts, right? Your discussion guides. How did you write your questions, right? What follow-up questions did you have, right? Do your questions lead, right? Because that's so important. So being able to just see that you've done it for Digitas is a big bonus, right? Because it tells us that when you have to interact with that outside vendor, that you're going to be able to guide them to get the type of research that you need.
Yes, thank you for that. So we have like another few minutes. I have a really unique question. There's so many specific questions. It's so hard to pick, but this is more geared toward mid-level positions. So what is your mid-level and junior position? So kind of leading into it, what is your advice on someone who has experience in freelance and contract, but not in corporation and company? Would you consider them as entry or more mid? One of the participants said that they were struggling with having too much experience with junior positions, but not having enough experience in like that mid-level section. I would love to hear the panelists take about, kind of jumping from that entry to junior to mid-level and that career growth progression. And what does that kind of look like? And, how can you, grow, and like what resources can you take?
So I would definitely say this is something that, full transparency, I would say I struggled with moving up in my career. It's hard. And it is hard going into some of these interviews, especially I remember when I went from an individual contributor to a manager level. And that was, it was really difficult to sit there and say like, okay, what does that portfolio look like? Because some of it, how do I convince this person that I can manage when I've never managed before? So it's what I would do, and it took practice. I didn't always get it on the first try. So I'm sure airing my dirty laundry. I didn't always get every job that I applied for and every job that I interviewed for. Shocking, right? Like everyone I'm sure has experienced this. But I would say that a lot of what I did was I would learn from some of those interviews. I remember one interview I went back and I redid my entire portfolio in a week of just, okay, this isn't what this person's looking for. I did some secondary research. I went through and I Googled case studies. I Googled, I talked to mentors. I talked to people I worked with to say, how did you move up? I'm currently doing that even at Vanguard too, of speaking to folks that are higher up than I am to say, tell me about your career. Tell me all the things I want to know. So I would say just really reaching out to folks and doing some research on your own, and also looking at that job description. So that was something that I really had to go into, and I would comb through some of the job descriptions to say, okay, this is what they're looking for. Am I articulating this in my case study? Am I articulating this in my resume? How am I presenting myself? And what I was learning was that before I did some of this and really dug into it, I was trying to get a manager's job, but I was still showcasing an individual contributor's portfolio. I wasn't showing how I led any of it. I wasn't showing how I led a project. I was more or less just saying, here's the thing I did, and I'll just walk you through kind of how I did it. So I definitely say like mentorship is huge. Definitely find that person that's really going to help you, but find the person that's 2, even 3 levels above you to talk to you, because they will, trust me, the second you ask them, they'll be all ears. They'll want to help. So I couldn't stress having a mentor. However you find them, just find your person. They will help you move up.
I think I would add to that, and I realize that this can be hard without getting your foot in the door in the interview process, but ask if you do get, in our case, that first recruiter screener call. Ask them, can you describe to me the difference between the different levels that you have at Think Company? What do you expect from a junior designer versus a mid-level designer versus a senior, whatever it is that you're going for? If you go to our About page, you can see our titles, so you get a sense of what some of the titles and levels are, right? So ask those questions because a lot of places use the same words to describe different skill sets, right? Like all 3 of us are probably doing it here where we think we mean the same thing when we say this word, and we probably don't, and that's fine. We don't have time to get into that. But I would say that's the case with leveling. Every company handles it differently, and every company defines the difference between each level differently. So if you can ask those questions, that's a really good thing, whether it's mentors in the industry and trends they're noticing, or do you strike up a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn before the interview process to ask those questions? You're not always going to get an answer, but I can tell you, I don't have any problem with somebody reaching out to me and asking the question. And I probably answer most of the time. And if it's a really busy week, maybe I'll forget to answer that week. But, for me, asking smart questions is another like, oh, I should keep this person in the back of my mind because they're asking really smart questions about like, what do you consider the differences between these levels? What are the expectations? I'm okay with those really direct questions. I like them.
So I love that. So to build off of that, once you know what the different levels entail at the place that you want to work, or in general in the industry, of course, it's a little bit different from place to place. Start doing that job where you work, right? As best you can. You may not always be able to do everything, but from my experience, you always have to sort of do the job for a little bit before you get the job. And people can see it, like we can see it in your portfolio, in your resume, right? And also make sure it is present in your portfolio and resume, right? So you start sort of moving from I did these wireframes and designs, right, to I set the vision for this product, and this is the strategy for the product based on the research, based on the business needs, right, based on user needs, based on tech feasibility, right? So like when you can start showing that, that is when it becomes really easy to move up to that next level. And don't be afraid. So like two things, if you're doing it and you're not getting recognized for it where you are, start looking for another job, right? And if you are at a place that does do promotions, and if you're at a place that you can see that they regularly promote people based on merit, right? Stay there and work and get the promotion, do the job. I have had my current job for 2 years. This year, 2023, is about doing the job that's above me, right? So this year and next year is about doing the job that's above me. So I'm 2 months into the year and I'm doing the job that is above me. So whether that turns into a promotion in 2 years or not, we'll see, right? But I think that it's unfortunate that that's the way that it is, but that just is the way that it is. So look for opportunities to take the lead unofficially, right? And turn that into something, turn that into an opportunity.
I know we're out of time, but I really like what you just said, Michael. So if I could, I'm just going to add one thing, which is, yes, look for those opportunities. I would add you don't only have to look for those opportunities in your current role. So shout out to groups like Philly Chi, or when I was early in my career, I was really, really heavily involved in AIGA. I was on the Philly board for a long time. I was on the Pittsburgh board for a long time. And I will say, I didn't realize it. I didn't know it at the time. So I can't take credit for like, oh, I knew what I was doing. But on the Philly board, I got on it because a professor from grad school invited me onto it. And I was like, okay, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. Fine, I'll do this board thing. But what I realized was, as an entry-level designer, I got to do other things on the AIGA board because we're volunteers, right? And so you can't be concerned about experience there. Everybody's just rolling up their sleeves and doing stuff. And within a year on the board, I realized like, oh, there's other skills that I need to be highlighting when I look for jobs that I didn't get to do at my job. And that's fine. But I can show that I was leading collaborative things. I can plan events. I can take budgets into consideration. Those were not part of my entry-level job. And that's fine. But I didn't realize it, but I found another way to kind of practice those things. And then at some point I had the realization, probably way too late, that like, I should be talking about the stuff that I do over there too.
Well, due to time, we're going to wrap up the Q&A. First of all, I just want to say I love that response because that is how I feel. I'm 6 months out of college, or 6 to 8 months out of college. So that makes me feel really relieved just starting out in my role. I was taking notes as we're going through this too. So I was also a participant / moderator. But yeah, I want to thank all of our panelists so much and our participants for sending in so many amazing questions. I apologize that we couldn't get through all of them, but I hope the ones that we were able to present to you with were very insightful and helpful, throughout your own career journey and whatnot.
And that is the end of our event. I would love to just thank the panelists one more time. If we want to do digital round of applause for everyone, that was incredible. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here and sticking it all the way through to the end. I hope that you got something out of it. You made some new connections, and definitely stay tuned for our next events that are coming up in the next few months. Thanks. Bye.